He's the beautiful, wonderful, fantastic Frank Schwab. I'm Jason Fitz. It is late on a Sunday night, and it has been an epic one. Frank, the compliments are just going to flow. We got a lot of football to get into, but I'm going to tell you, brother, I've been in a good mood. I've been in a good mood since about 4 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah,
I can't even.
What could have brought that on?
I'm just telling you, like, I sense, for everybody that doesn't follow all of the Yahoo work, you should. I was hosting Fantasy Football Live today, and all of a sudden, Matt Harmon over here chirping about how bad the Raiders were going to lose. My beloved Raiders won. I sent cough, hello, cough, heard nothing. I'm just saying Harmon, coward. All of a sudden, I'm talking my talk. Like, it has been a day, Frank. I don't know if you're ready for the level of energy I'm about to bring for the next hour as we break down every single game.
I mean, fantastic. The few things, first of all, you said it's week 2, so we can overreact. And we overreact to everything every week. It's the NFL. That's just how it goes. But 2, as somebody who dabbles, somebody who plays fantasy football a lot, I cannot remember. Maybe I say this every year at this time, but that's fine. I'm going to say it again. I can't remember a year where it was like, I know nothing about the NFL. Nothing. Like, as far as like, who's good, who's not good, what players are good, what players are not good. It just seems like everything changes from week to week. We were going to go for, like, there was a time when I was actually typing out to in our Slack channel at work, the Bengals were going to go from losing at home to the Patriots to beating Kansas City at Arrowhead. What's going on? Obviously, the Bengals blew that, but still the sentiment remains that, like, everything is turned upside down. The Ravens and the Bengals are 0-2. The Seahawks and the Vikings are 2-0, and the Patriots look okay. Just nothing makes sense right now after 2 weeks in the NFL.
Yeah, I feel good about my decision to not listen to your advice. I stayed on the sidelines for a second straight week. I was like, I'm not ready to bet. And I feel good about the fact that, like, the number of survivor pools out there that are just absolutely destroyed. Look, we're going to get into every game. Before we do that, I want to remind everybody, if you're listening to us right now, we're obviously on our own feed at this point. Inside Coverage is. If you subscribe to that feed, if you leave a review, it really helps what we're doing here. So make sure you do that. Get out there, rate, subscribe, review, do all of those things. I usually tell you at the end, but I want to make sure I tell you now so I don't forget through the chaos and joy we're about to get into. We've got a few games that I want to highlight. And we're going to start with, Frank, the most important game possibly in the history of the NFL. I think that's a fair statement.
Sure.
As I was sitting, I was just melting on my couch, right? I'm just sitting back. I changed my setup this week a little bit. So I changed where my TVs were positioned. That will now be the positioning moving forward.
Was this just superstition or?
No, it's just I wanted better sight lines and everything. So work it all out. I'm sitting in the chair. I'm drinking my diet root beer. I'm splurging a little bit. I actually got myself one double chocolate donut. I was like, I need to mix up the mojo from last week. And I watched through 3 quarters the Ravens just toy with my beloved Raiders, as Baltimore looked like they were mostly going to find a way to win what looked like an ugly football game. For the second straight week, the Raiders defense really good for the first half, gassed in the second half. I'm watching big play after big play, and I'm thinking, this is how it's going to go. The Ravens go up by 10 in the fourth quarter. I think it's over. And I'm handling the loss with more adulthood than I usually do at this point. I'm sitting back and I'm saying, you know what? I expected this. The Ravens are very good. It's fine. Well, after 46 consecutive losses when trailing by 10 or more in the fourth quarter for my beloved Raiders, that streak breaks as suddenly the offense found its rhythm by abandoning the run. Gardner Minshew just found a way to get the ball to Devontae and Brock over and over and over again. The Raiders shock the football world and say up yours to all of the survivor pools by winning 26-23 in Baltimore. You can't tell me this is not a huge win when you look at the landscape for where Baltimore is trying to go. It's a huge loss. And for the Raiders and what they're trying to shake off after last week, it is a huge win.
Yeah, I mean, big, obviously. A few things stood out from this game to me. Your guy, Max Crosby, I thought was a really, just a great leadership moment. Minshew throws an interception in the second quarter. He's coming off the sideline, and Max Crosby stops him, and it almost looks like he's confronting him. But no, you could tell, I'm not a lip reader, but you could tell Max Crosby was saying, hey, and he's poking the finger in his chest, saying, basically, you stay in this thing. We got you. We're good. Don't worry about that. Move on. And Minshew and him, they give each other a high five, a kind of bro hug, and you look at that at the end of the game, and you say, that was the moment that led to that win. It really, I believe that, because Max Crosby was saying, don't give up. We're in this together. This isn't offense versus defense. This is the Raiders. We're going to figure out a way. And it looked so dire in the fourth quarter. To be honest with you, Fitz, I tuned out of that game. I'm writing winners and losers. And, the Raiders down 10 to the Ravens. It wasn't impressive by the Ravens in any way, but I was like, oh, that game's done. And I kept looking at that screen every once in a while, like, what's going on? What's going on? And all of a sudden it's like, well, the Raiders are moving the ball right now, and Daniel Carlson's one of the best kickers of football. They're going to take a lead here. It's stunning, absolutely stunning. The Raiders, they needed this. You just don't want to go to 0-2. It looked like another unimpressive day for the offense. They were going to lose, 23-13 or whatever the score was at that point. And you were going to, you're going to hear a week of like, oh, maybe they should go to Aidan O'Connell. And Minshew really dug them out of that. Devontae Adams came alive, played well, huge win. But I think honestly, your Raider fandom aside, the big story here is the Ravens. They're 0-2 now. 0-2 is usually a death sentence when it comes to making the playoffs in the NFL. The AFC is really deep this year, as it has been the past few years. I don't think the Ravens are going to miss the playoffs necessarily, but this is a bad loss, a really, really bad loss. You lose at Kansas City at Arrowhead. Oh, well, what happened? Whatever. Isaiah Likely wears a shoe size a little smaller, and you might win that game. No big deal. But you come home and you blow a 10-point lead to the Raiders. I just not good vibes out of that. The fact that they've taken a ton of terrible penalties. They had a chance to kind of put this game away. Derrick Henry, of all people, has a false start that moves them back from 3rd and 1 to 3rd and 6, and they can't convert. And it just these things are kind of snowballing on the Ravens. They're usually a very, very good team. They're obviously really well coached, but they're making sloppy mistakes like a poorly coached team. I get it's early in the season, and it's a preseason for some of these teams because they don't actually play in the preseason. But it's kind of a troubling loss for the Ravens. I think they're going to get it together. I think they'll be fine. But 0-2 is 0-2.
It's a huge loss for the Ravens because look at Todd Monken. Like the offensive coordinator for the Ravens is somebody, for anyone that doesn't know, he came from Georgia, really inventive offenses in Georgia. I came into this season saying that I thought the Ravens had the chance to be the most unstoppable offense in the NFL. They have not lived up to that potential. And more importantly to them, they haven't just done what works. Like in the second half, Derrick Henry running the ball straight down the throats of the Raiders was working. And then in the fourth quarter, they just stop doing some of that. It made no sense to me. Like you reached a situation where you repeatedly had the Raiders defense sort of on their heels in the second half. Again, they ran out of gas. They pointed out on the broadcast, you could see guys that they needed to get off the field. They had nothing left in the tank. And instead of exposing that and just simply going down and outpowering the Raiders, the Ravens instead decided to try and get cute over and over and over again. And when there is one player on the defensive side of the ball in Max Crosby that can beat you in every possible situation, you don't want to put yourself in the position where he can make a big play. And that's exactly what happened late. When the Ravens needed to move the ball, the first thing that happened was Max Crosby on a stunt comes through and sacks Lamar Jackson. Like you don't want to get in that situation because you don't want to let the best be the best when they need to be the best. And that's exactly what a great offensive coordinator is supposed to prevent. And Todd Monken did none of that in this game. I thought the game plan was absolute garbage from the Ravens, and the Raiders were lucky that it was an undisciplined effort.
Yeah, Henry did have it going in the second half. And this is why you get Derrick Henry. This is why you sign him. For the moments where you have a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter, you're trying to just take away the other team's will. Okay, that's why Derrick Henry exists. That's why that 247-pound running back in your backfield is going to finish this game. He's a closer. Wasn't really allowed to do that. Like you said, some weird stuff from the Ravens there. It couldn't get the stop they needed on defense. It was just kind of a mess in the fourth quarter. And Again, do I think the Ravens are a bad football team? No, I think they're going to be really good. But almost like I was saying about the Bengals after week 1, this is a game you look back on in December when you look at the standings saying, oh, man, if we just hadn't blown that game to the Raiders in week 2. That's this kind of loss. And the flip side is true, too. The Raiders, who knows? They might be looking up in December.
They play Carolina. The next game is Carolina. The Raiders have a real shot at being 2-1.
I can't wait to talk about them.
If I told you this morning that the Raiders would rush for a total of 27 yards for an average of 1.6 yards per rush, and they would beat Baltimore in Baltimore, you'd have laughed at me, especially with Derrick Henry going off. And frankly, as a team, the Ravens rushed for 151 yards and made most of that look pretty effortless. Like, you don't win in those stats and usually lose a game like they lost here. I'm with you. I think when you look at the rest of the AFC, when you look at the standard that Baltimore is going to be held to, when you look at the playoff standard that could be required this year, Baltimore doesn't need a hole to dig themselves out of, and they're in that hole out of their own fault. And if you're the Raiders, now you win a game that, frankly, you didn't look like you were going to win for much of it. And it's yet again a statement that you have a defense that is going to keep you in games every single week. And that there's power to that. This team's going to lose some games they shouldn't lose. They're going to win some games they shouldn't win. They're going to be in all of these games because the defense is too good not to be.
Yeah, it's it is one of those games where it is weird that the Raiders really didn't play that well. I don't even think you would say they played that well.
No.
Like offensively, they were stuck. Like you said, no running game. Minshew at one point late in the fourth quarter, because I was starting to write that part of winners and losers, and was kind of honestly writing about, well, maybe they do have to consider a quarterback change soon, and it's not Minshew's fault, but nothing's happening on offense. And he had 130 yards passing before he kind of came alive for those last few drives. It was just ugly for them, and they somehow win that game. Like, this wasn't one of those wins where, you rush for 200 yards or you get 2 pick sixes like you did against the Chiefs last year. It's just kind of an ugly game, and they somehow won, and that's what's probably most alarming to the Ravens right now.
Well, the most alarming result above and beyond this one was the game that I don't think any of us saw coming. In fact, my bold fantasy prediction on Thursday night on FFL was the Saints would come back to earth and not to play any of their players because they're not going to do well against the Cowboys. Boy, was that wrong. 44-19 in a game that, frankly, Frank, wasn't that close. Again,
nope.
New Orleans beats Dallas 44-19, and suddenly Derek Carr looks like the second coming. This offense looks absolutely unstoppable. We're talking big plays. We're talking chunk yardage. We're talking absolutely just demolishing the Cowboys in a game that in the fourth quarter I found myself saying, why does Dallas still have their starters in? They're getting so beat down. This is pointless. I cannot believe how good New Orleans looked, and I cannot believe how terrible the Cowboys were in this one.
Yeah, and I mean, if you didn't have Baltimore in your survival pool, you had Dallas probably, and hey, that'd be way to be a contrarian there. And if this was week 1, we might be like, wow, okay, Dallas really isn't that good on defense, Dan Quinn, blah, blah, blah. They look great in week 1. Like, I don't get it. I looked at that Dallas team week 1, and I smugly said, boy, for all those people who thought the Cowboys were going to take a step back, you really look dumb now.
Mm-hmm. I said the same thing.
Like,
oops.
Right? And now in week 2, I'm sitting there watching Alvin Kamara score over and over and over and over. And I'm like, what in the world is going on? We'll get to the Cowboys in a second, but let's first talk about the Saints, because week 1, they absolutely blasted the Panthers. It was 30-0 at one point in the first half, 33 at halftime. And you know what I thought all week? Well, it's the Panthers. They're a JV team. Who cares? Like, I didn't even give the Saints any credit for it. And I'll be honest with you. I was just like, that's fine. They did what they had to do against a really, really bad football team. But I'm not going to sit here and say the Saints are any good because they beat the Panthers. Well, they look really good against the Cowboys, who just came off of blasting the Browns, who actually didn't look bad this week. So we're using a whole bunch of transitive properties now to say, I don't know what to make of the Saints. Are they good? Is this a good Saints team? Because all of a sudden, new coordinator, and Derek Carr looks reborn. Rashid Shaheed is an awesome player who he just needs to get more volume at some point. Every time he touches the ball, it's something electric happens. They still got Olave. Kamara looks like he's got a lot left in to take. This line hasn't been as bad as I thought it would be. Defense has been fine. The Saints might be good. Like, I don't know what else to say after we just saw them demolish the Cowboys like that.
The concerning part to me in this one is that Dallas came out flat. And that takes nothing away from New Orleans. You're right. New Orleans was great. Dallas came out flat. And all I kept thinking when I watched it is this is the problem with the Cowboys. And as much as I say the Cowboys are going to win 12 games, that's what they do every year. The problem is sometimes they come out like this. And you better figure out what the hell happened, because this reminded me a lot of what we saw last year in the playoffs. A team that just came out and never looked checked in. And it's inexcusable to me to happen at any time, but especially the second week of the season when you're at home, can't happen. Like, there's no excuse to come out that flat against a team that was good in week 1. There's no excuse to come out that unengaged in this game. I thought Dallas, the inexcusable part of the Cowboys game was not that they got their asses kicked. It's the way they sort of walked through the entire game to me that gives me pause. When you talk about elite teams, you think, man, you're right. Early in the season, hard to figure out who's good, who's bad. It's not hard to figure out who doesn't give a damn sometimes, and that's exactly what the Cowboys felt like today.
And both of us were on this Cowboys train of why is everybody panicking? This is still a team that wins 12 games every season. Yeah, they're going to disappoint us in January, but that's kind of their DNA. They're going to be good in the regular season. Where are we at on them now? Where are you at on the Cowboys? Who's somebody? I mean, you were very vocal. You thought you were talking Cowboys 1 seed, and I'm not trying to. There's plenty of
you're right.
Old takes exposed for me too. So I'm not trying to do that to you. But where are you at with the Cowboys? Because they couldn't have looked any different from week 1 to week 2. Week 1, it was like, wow, this can't be the number 1 seed in the NFC. They just demolished the Browns on the road. Wow, the Cowboys. And then they come home and play. Like you said, they were just disengaged the whole game. They're flat. Like, it was like, by the time it was like, I think it was like 21-6 at some point. You're like, are they going to show up at all today? Like, it was troubling. Like, you said, how little fight they had. So where are you at on the Cowboys right now?
I'm concerned about, and I realize this game got out of control early. I acquiesce to that. I'm concerned that the Cowboys don't really have an answer to how to run the football. And that makes them even more one-dimensional now. Last year, Tony Pollard only averaged about 61 yards a game. So my thought was you can get 61 yards a game from almost anywhere. Well, turns out you can't, right? Like Rico Dowdle, Ezekiel Elliott, that is not the tandem that's going to win you games, right? And I know that the game was so out of control that they didn't really have the chance to run, but I don't think there's a threat of Dallas running the ball at all right now, and they need to figure that out. They need to figure that out quickly. The offensive line got to hold up a little bit better. They got to figure that out quickly. Like it feels like today was one of those days where you see how bad it can look when it's out of sync. Now, that being said, we've seen that from several teams, but we only have 2 games body of work. And right now, it's fair to look at it and say, man, you've seen the standard through one game that the Eagles are setting. If that's the standard, the Cowboys are not to that standard, right? And so they got to figure that out and figure it out quickly because they've told you the players aren't the problem by the contracts they've given you. They've told you they're curious if the coach is the problem by the contract they haven't given him, right? So every week to me is a bit of an audition, right? It's a bit of a tryout to figure out what they're going to do to make things better. Today, I looked at it and thought, man, there was nothing about the talent on that field that I felt like was coached up to be better than the Saints. I don't think Dennis Allen and the Saints are a juggernaut, and I think Dennis Allen and the Saints outperformed and outcoached the Cowboys today. I think that's significant.
Yeah, again, maybe we just look back at 10 weeks where like the Saints are really, really good. I'm going to stick with the Cowboys. I am. I'm going to go with more
Too early
the
not to.
12-win pedigree. 12-win pedigree every year. Great week 1 against the Browns, or whatever happened today happened. I mean, maybe this was the first time we said, oh, yeah, they don't have Dan Quinn anymore. And Dan Quinn's a heck of a defensive coordinator. And they just looked out of sorts. They just looked like they were in a wrong place the whole game. It was a horrible defensive performance. 35 points in the first half, tied for the most in franchise history. So I'm going to give the Cowboys a pass. But you know, it's week 3? Ravens at Cowboys. One of those teams is just slamming the panic button after week 3, right? Either you have an 0-3 Ravens team or you have a Cowboys team that's going to lose twice in a row at home and be 1-2, and you know how Dallas is. So that Dallas Ravens game in week 3 is going to be fascinating because, again, these 2 teams come out of week 2 with a lot more questions than I thought they would have.
So, Frank, you know, I'm on this journey, this health journey, no alcohol for me right now. So there were 2 times today that I really wanted to drink. One was a celebratory drink at the end of the Raiders game. I think that's normal. The second time that I really wanted to drink today was at the end of the Chiefs-Bengals game. Kansas City beats Cincinnati 26-25. And I sat here and I watched it. And as the game finished, I thought, I just don't know how you beat the Chiefs. For anyone that didn't see it, Patrick Mahomes threw for the second lowest yardage total in any game of his career. And the lowest, the only time he threw for less, was a game he did not finish due to injury. Patrick Mahomes threw 2 interceptions. The entire Chiefs team looked out of sorts, out of whack. Yet, here we are, with a minute and a half left. Chiefs get the ball. Mahomes has the chance. And what do? They drive down the field. And they even get stuck on a 4th and 16 that felt seemingly impossible. And instead of the game ending, as seems to always happen with the Chiefs, there's a pass interference call that, by the way, was the right call against the Bengals. It was the right call. It put them in field goal range. And before you know it, as time expires, 26-25, the Bengals, who weren't particularly clean in this game either, lost to a Chiefs team that gave us a half-assed Kansas City effort. And even through that, the Chiefs get the 1-point win. I don't know how you beat a team that just always finds a way to win.
Fitz, I was pretty proud of this. Winners and losers, I'm trying to sum up this game and how the Chiefs pulled this off. And I equated it to Breaking Bad and Jesse Pinkman just screaming to the heavens, how does he keep getting away with this? That's the Chiefs. How do they keep doing this? And I know all the conspiracy theorists are going to be up in arms. Oh, the referees are on the Chiefs' side and all this kind of stuff.
Oh, stop.
It was a right call. He got there early. It's a rookie 7th-round pick at safety. Probably shouldn't be in a game at that point because he's going to make mistakes like that. He got there early, and they just snatched that win when it looked like a loss. And I'll be honest, I'm a little concerned about the Chiefs. Again, it's early in the season. Teams are figuring things out, but they are one of the teams that does play starters in the preseason. And through 2 games, what do we have? We have if Isaiah Likely comes down with that touchdown, he was inches away from it. The Ravens are going for 2 in the win. in this game, they got pretty lucky to win. They got a scoop and score fumble return for a touchdown and still should have lost at home to the Bengals, who did not look good against the Patriots in week 1. And you just, like you said, this is not the high-flying Chiefs offense that we expected. Really, like, Mahomes throws for 151. They were fine. Like, they were bad in any way, but this isn't Mahomes throwing for 340 or anything like that. This was kind of a quiet day for Patrick Mahomes. Travis Kelce, is the age curve hit? Like, we have to wonder about this. He's at that age. I don't want it to happen. He's an all-time great, fun player. But in this game, I believe he had 1 catch, 5 yards, something like that. He's just wasn't really a factor in any way. And you have to wonder if that's just Travis Kelce going forward. I'm a little concerned about the Chiefs. I think they're going to be fine. They're 2-0. 2-0 is 2-0, and it makes a big difference. You're not the Ravens trying to figure this stuff out at 0-2. But just the way these first 2 games have gone at home, again, good opponents, so it's not the worst thing in the world, but they're not exactly clicking on all cylinders. Maybe that comes later in the year, and this Chiefs team is just going to go on to dominate. But it's not happening yet, and they could very, very easily be 0-2 right now. They
could, but then the other side of it is, I know that we just talked about how Baltimore could be panicking. They have a win over Baltimore and the win over the Bengals. This is why the schedule game.
You're right.
This is why, like, every year in the fall or in the spring, when we sit down and say, okay, let's look at it. Well, this is going to be an easy win. This is going to be it. Like, we don't know. Like, because right now the Ravens don't look particularly good, and the Bengals have been out of whack, right? Like, so we don't know if these teams are going to be good or not, but we do know that if you start the season 2-0 with wins over the Ravens and the Bengals, you get the Falcons next on Sunday Night Football, then the Chargers, the Saints, like, they've got some winnable games through this process. The hard part for Kansas City, like, I take the opposite approach to you because it looks ugly and they still win. And the problem is, as we've covered a million times, when you look at the record of Mahomes in close games, it's absolutely unthinkable how good he is in one-score games. He doesn't lose one-score games. And the problem is the Chiefs don't play games that aren't one-score games. So what the hell do you do when 13 seconds is enough time for a fan base to realize they're not going to the Super Bowl while Mahomes just marches down the field? It happens over and over. At some point, it's not luck, it's identity. At some point, it's not, oh my God, the world's fixing these outcomes. It's just, oh my God, there's a culture here that finds a way to win. Like, good teams find a way to win, and the Chiefs just do it. They do it every time. It's why everybody at this point that's not a Chiefs fan hates them, because you feel like you're never lucky, and you watch Kansas City do it and you're like, man, they always get it. And it's not luck anymore. It's skill. It has to be skill, because you can't get lucky. You can't get lucky as many times as the Chiefs have gotten lucky with some of these outcomes. It just has to be a deal with the devil, a deal with the football gods, or just flat out skill.
Absolutely. On the flip side of this too, I think we need to talk about the Bengals a little bit, because again, yeah, you looked a little bit better. You probably should have won, but 0-2 is 0-2. Ain't a good way to start. And, Burrow slammed his helmet down after the defensive pass interference. He was the Jesse Pinkman really here. I think he was very frustrated right there. But, I mean, I hate to, look, playing sports psychologist when you're not in the locker room is hard to do, but T. Higgins isn't playing and is already kind of telling reporters like, hey, people need to get off my back about faking an injury. I'm really hurt. Okay, well, it's still not a story you want to be dealing with 2 weeks into the season. And then I thought the Jamar Chase blow up over the missed call, which I don't even know is a missed call. Some people speculated that he might have thought it was a hip drop that didn't get called. Whatever it was, he was mad about. He didn't comment after the game. He just skipped out without talking to the media, so we don't really know. But it was such an overreaction of Jamar Chase. I didn't know if some of that was just kind of a spillover of my contract isn't done. I'm not really happy to be here. Not really feeling appreciated by the Bengals right now. And it just kind of came out in frustration at a really, really bad point for them right there when they, a touchdown could have put the game away, and all of a sudden they're in 3rd and 24 or whatever it was. So just kind of the vibes are off a little bit with the Bengals. They should be fine. If you almost win at Arrowhead Stadium, you're a pretty good football team. But yet, again, 0-2 is 0-2. It's a really, really tough AFC. You can't dig yourself this big of a hole, and now the Bengals are in one.
The referee, Alex Kemp, who threw the flag, said in a pool report after the game, Chase believed it was a hip drop tackle. According to Kemp, Chase's questioning of the play led to an exchange that produced, this is a quote, abusive language. He said the simple answer is profanity used by grown men versus direct, personal, abusive language towards a game and official. That's the line. When the line gets crossed, we simply can't let that happen in pro football.
Oh, Chase was asking for it. He was like a baseball manager trying to get thrown out of a game. You could tell he was getting that penalty. And you just wonder, again, like, not trying to play sports psychologist here. I guess I am. is all that a little bit like, I'm just frustrated. I'm just frustrated with everything. And it's not just this game. It's not just this play. I'm frustrated with the Cincinnati Bengals right now that I'm not paid, and this is how it's going to come out. I don't know. Like, it's easy to draw that line, right?
And at some point, what do we always hear? The absolute greats know how to channel their emotion, know how to cap their emotion, play within their emotion, right? So, like, you can play with emotion, but you can't let emotion play you. And he got played by his emotions in this. He's got to be better. If he's one of the best in the league and wants to be paid by like one of the best in the league, he has to step up in these moments. He cannot do that to his team in these moments.
And
Inexcusable.
The official was trying to walk away. He was trying to walk away.
Twice.
Like, yes, he did not want to throw that flag right there, but Chase basically was like, I don't care. You are throwing this flag because I'm getting one right now. And that's just, it's almost inexcusable at that part of the game. This is the first quarter. They're not winning by 21 points. This is a tight game against the Kansas City Chiefs. And now you blow that game, and now you're winning a tiebreaker over them. Let's put it that way.
And it was third and manageable. Like, if he doesn't get if the flag isn't thrown, it's 3rd and 5. It's 3rd and 6. And like, it went from 3rd and 6 to 3rd, or I guess it would have been math. It would have been 3rd and 7. 3rd and 7 because it went to 3rd and 22. So that means the 15-yard penalty. So like, but still 3rd and 7 felt manageable. They were in a manageable down and distance period in that game that, the game was so close. Also, we saw a missed extra point that, like, Cincinnati imploded. Like, Cincinnati can look back and say, okay, we lost this game for several reasons. It's
Burrow's
just
fumble that gets returned for a touchdown. Like, they were a better team. They really were. They got nothing to show for it.
Speaking of teams that stepped on their own feet, and I'm saying that politely because I don't want producer Stone to have to actually bleep out the way the expression goes. I don't remember the last time I saw a team in back-to-back weeks implode the way the Tennessee Titans have. I'm sure somebody out there will tell me of another team that has done this. But the Jets beat the Titans 24-17 in Tennessee in a game that they were losing, in a game that not only were they down, not only were the Jets down in this, but there was also a deep drive. This game was 7-0. It was a deep drive and a turnover when the Titans were going in to score, could have made it 14-0. Later on, the Titans had a punt block. Like, everything that could go wrong for the Titans in this game went wrong. For every time they had a chance to separate, they found a way to not separate. And Will Levis had another one of those moments in this game. He was going down. He heaves the ball out in what turns out to be a fumble. He was trying to get it out to somebody, and it was a backward pass. In the moment, as he was walking off the field, the cameras went to Brian Callahan, the new coach of the Titans, screaming, "What the F are you doing?" over and over and over again. Like,
amazing.
The stupidity in play of Will Levis has now cost them 2 wins. This team might not be very good, but they could be 2-0 if Will Levis pulled his head out of his ass long enough to be a quarterback in the NFL. He hasn't done it. The Jets get the win.
Right, absolutely. 2 games you can kind of pin both on Will Levis because he blew that game against the Bears too. And
yes,
this is look. When you cover the NFL, you know that if a quarterback has to really do something extreme for a coach to air him out. And it's usually a relationship that's been built over time, and they feel they could do that. But even still, usually coaches pretty much are soft. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to criticizing their quarterback, they don't want to do that. That's the leader of the team. They don't want to air him out in public. This is probably in Callahan's 2nd game as Titans coach, and he already sounds fed up. So they asked him, kind of a gotcha moment, right? Like, oh, hey, Coach Callahan, we saw you say, "What the F are you thinking?" on the sidelines. What did you really mean? And he was like, yeah, that summed it up good. I want to read Brian Callahan's quote because this is about as harsh as I've ever heard a coach directly talk about his quarterback before. Quote, "It was dumb. It was the exact same thing he did last week, and he cost us points in the red zone, and it is what it is. He's a grown-up, and he needs to know better, and so I was really irritated that he cost us 3 points in a game that we probably needed it." That might not sound like a ton on the surface to you, but that is I am fed up with this quarterback already, and this isn't going to work. Like that's how harsh of a quote that is from a coach to a quarterback. I was very intrigued by that, and the reaction of Will Levis coming out to the sideline and Callahan screaming obscenities at him. But I understand it. Like that, again, 2 straight games, Will Levis is throwing his team out of the game.
I keep thinking about how you even rebuild that trust. And I don't know that you can. Like, the Will Levis experiment is 0 for 2 in this game. The other side of it is the Jets won. I watched this game as it was going down. The Jets do not look good. And it's fine that they won the football game.
On you here. I don't know. Look, Here's my take on the Jets, who, yes, I did pick to go to the Super Bowl. They're coming off a Monday night game, really tough game against the 49ers, very physical team. They have to play week 2 on the road against Tennessee, who does have a pretty good defensive front and all that kind of stuff. That's a tough spot for them to be in. And they have a Thursday night football game against New England, so they're already looking forward to that. It was just a really, really tough scheduling spot for the Jets. Was not surprised that they came out a little flat, a little bad. They're down 10-7 at the half. They did pull out the win. This is one of, look, some weeks I'm like, hey, it didn't look really pretty. I'm not that impressed with this win. This one I was like, whatever. It doesn't matter how it looked. You needed to get this win and just get back home for that Thursday night game.
But at some point, see, the problem is, we're holding the Jets to this standard like they're on the precipice of a Super Bowl. And the funny thing about that is everybody says, well, the Jets were one quarterback away from the Super Bowl. Maybe you remember, because you're a better historian than I am. How many teams just suddenly go from, we haven't been in the playoffs in ages, and we've never done anything in the playoffs. We haven't even been there, to all of a sudden, we're part of the Super Bowl conversation. Like, that just doesn't happen. Usually, there's a progression. You get into the playoffs, and you get your butt kicked, and then eventually, you take that next step. Like, it happens. But we've just assigned this Aaron Rodgers God status to everything. And I saw an Aaron Rodgers today that was fine. Like, but we're not talking about him like he's fine. No, Aaron Rodgers was an okay starting quarterback today that played okay, and the Jets offense looked okay. The Jets offensive line, I thought, got abused quite often. The pocket collapsed more than it should, right? So I saw an okay offense for a team that we talk about is about to be great. And you watch teams like Buffalo. Buffalo looks great, right? Like, would I bet my house right now on this version of the Jets against the Bills? No. Would I bet my house on this version of the Jets against the Chiefs? No. Like, at some point, this version of the Jets, we either need to talk about them like they actually are playing on the field, which is an okay football team, or we need to start acknowledging that, like, they're not living up to whatever this expectation is that we have.
And that is all fair. By the way, the 99 Rams kind of did that coming out of nowhere, but they're the biggest outlier.
I knew you'd know.
One of the greatest stories in sports history. So I don't exactly expect that to be replicated in my lifetime. But with the Jets, too, I think this does have to be mentioned, with me kind of giving them a pass for today, getting a win any way they could. You lose Jermaine Johnson to what looked like an Achilles injury. That it looks serious. They're really, really good young pass rusher. CJ Mosley goes down with an injury too, although they didn't really seem to miss him in the second half. Filled him in really well. But those are still a couple big injuries that this defense is supposed to carry them. Not as good without Jermaine Johnson. Still haven't seen Hassan Reddick. Maybe he's got a little more leverage now with Jermaine Johnson hurt. So you're right. The Jets have to play better. There's no question about that. And Aaron Rodgers certainly has not hit his stride by any means. But just getting a win here, because when it was 10-7 in the first half, I'm like, oh my goodness, the headlines that are being written for the back page right now. This is going to be a horrible few days for the Jets. You pulled out a win in a really tough scheduling spot. I'm okay with that. But you're right, they do have to play better than they've shown.
I'd love to see if we make as many excuses for teams that aren't named the Jets as we do for the Jets. That's all. All right. Well, you said hitting the stride. We're just out hitting our stride. We're going through every single game, even the trash ones, plus some huge performances. We'll keep that coming to you. But first, we got to take a quick break. All right, Frank, a bunch of other games to get into. We've hit some of the big ones, but we'll get into all of them, not the least of which I think a really surprising game was a defensive struggle between Tampa Bay and Detroit. This game was 6-3 for a long time. This game never got a lot of rhythm, and we're so used to talking about the Lions for their greatness on offense. The only thing that was great about the Lions in this game was Aidan Hutchinson, 4.5 sacks, one forced fumble on this one. Tampa Bay, watch out. Like, I thought the Bucs might take a step back with Dave Canales no longer being their offensive coordinator. They get a gritty, tough win against what was supposed to be one of the best teams in the NFC. What is one of the best teams in the NFC? Tip of the cap, the Bucs are better than I thought they'd be.
I do have to throw this out, that there are some games when you look back on it and you say, all right, honestly, they cover your ears, Buccaneers fans. Probably the wrong team won here. Lions had 463 yards in this game. The Buccaneers had 216 and somehow won this game. Jared Goff, a couple awful interceptions, one in the second half in their territory.
You're just glossing over that. No, you're talking hot garbage. We're talking Will Levis level interceptions here. Like,
wow,
terrible.
Don't go full Will Levis.
Okay, not full Levis. You can never go full Levis. It's a almost Levis. How about that?
But this game, I thought the Lions were the better team. They just kept making mistakes, couldn't convert when they had to. Turnover on downs a couple times late in the game. And it just, you combine this with the fact that they Look, I just said the Lions are probably a better team and lost. Well, I don't know that the Rams weren't the better team last weekend and lost, right? So Lions are coming off a stretch in which the 2 home games to start the season, it could easily be 0-2. This hasn't been the Lions team I expected. Yes, they are moving the ball just fine, but again, you almost lose to the Rams at home. You do lose to the Buccaneers at home. I don't care how many yards you get. You still lost. It's not good for them right now. And I think that they're still working on some things. They're going to get it together. But yet, they're another team that to the start of the season has not been as impressive as we thought. And I'm sitting here saying, okay, who are the Lions? Are they good? I mean, you shouldn't be losing to the Buccaneers at home. You just should. The Buccaneers aren't a bad football team by any means. But it's still, if you're the Lions and you have these Super Bowl dreams, you don't lose to the Buccaneers at home. You just don't. And for them to lose this game, making as many mistakes as they did, was not a good look.
Also, though, I mean, a couple of dropped picks that could have been there. Like, this could have been an even worse game for Goff.
Yeah,
Amon-Ra St. Brown had it was obviously not right. Like, there are some concerns.
He was really banged up at the end. He couldn't move. Like, I was really worried about him. I mean, and I wonder if, he's a tough dude. Like, we found out in the receiver documentary that he played through like a torn oblique or something. Like, it was something crazy that he played with last year. He's a tough dude, and I assume he's going to play. But I mean, that ankle injury did not, if it was an ankle injury, foot, whatever it was, did not look good at the end of the game. He could barely move.
Yeah, we'll see how the Lions look moving forward, because there's obviously a lot of concern there. One game, and you're right, Tampa Bay, but Baker Mayfield continues to be efficient. Baker Mayfield with the beautiful run in this game. Like, this we're seeing Baker Mayfield take whatever he can and make the most of it. That reminds me a little of what we saw in the Green Bay win over the Colts, 16-10 win for the Packers. I got to give a tip of the cap to Malik Willis, who I've been hard on too. I mean, think about this. As bad as Will Levis is as a quarterback, the Titans decided it wasn't even worth keeping Malik Willis in the room to try and compete. They traded him for a conditional 7th-round draft pick a few weeks ago to the Packers. They basically said, nah, we'll go with this guy over here over Malik Willis. Don't even need him in the building. So I didn't have great expectations. I thought Malik played a pretty clean game, and the other Packers stepped up. Green Bay gets a 16-10 win over the Colts. But I think, Frank, part of the thing here we got to keep mentioning, Anthony Richardson giveth and taketh away. Like, this, I feel like I'm dying on this soapbox, but like, there are ups and downs to Anthony Richardson, which we should expect. But boy, they reared their ugly head in this game.
Oh, he was not good. Let's start with the Colts. This is an embarrassing loss for them, honestly. You came into this game knowing the Green Bay Packers really can't pass the ball. Look, Willis did have an efficient game. He played well. I'll get to them in a second. But
ran the ball well,
and you just get gashed. I think it was 247 rushing yards in the first half. Josh Jacobs had 120 in the first half. Like, that is embarrassing for your defense. Like, what are you doing? And then, like you said, the offensive issues, they got nothing going. And I wonder, like, Anthony Richardson in this game only had 4 carries for 37 yards. That's not his game. I wonder if an offseason of hearing about, oh, you can't get hurt again. Don't you get hurt? Protect yourself. I wonder if that's in his head and he's not as proactive in the running game as he was before. It takes away a lot of what he does because he's not there as a passer. Saw that again today. Completing 50% of his passes, throwing 3 interceptions. He was not good in this game at all.
Interceptions
he got outplayed by Malik Willis. He did. Like, that's just fact. Like, what do you want me to say? Like, I can't sit here and say anything else. So really kind of a troubling 0-2 start for the Colts, who I had high hopes for. I thought they were going to be good, but they're not clicking yet. And Richardson's got to play better, period. On the other side of the ball, as dabblers, I am going to look at the odds for Matt LaFleur Coach of the Year, because I thought today was his Picasso. He was awesome. Matt LaFleur, Malik Willis deserves a lot of credit. He played well. He got himself ready a few weeks after joining the Packers. I thought this win was Matt LaFleur. He stole this win for the Green Bay Packers, which he's going to have to do maybe a couple times so Jordan Love gets well. I thought that he changed completely his offense, got very creative in the run game. There were so many motions and sweeps and misdirections. And you could tell Matt LaFleur was like, I got to change everything, and I'm going to do it in a week, and we're going to be ready to go. And they were. I was so impressed. Matt LaFleur is one of these guys who, for years, when he had Aaron Rodgers as a quarterback, everybody would be like, oh, he's not that good. He's got Aaron Rodgers. Who cares? I don't care if he's got 70 winning percentage. What does it matter? He's not a good coach. He's a very good coach. He's one of the best coaches in the NFL. And if he can navigate this Packers team through these few weeks when Jordan Love is either out of the lineup or back in the lineup and not quite himself yet because of sprained MCL, I think that he's going to get real Coach of the Year consideration if this team makes the playoffs. I thought that really they were in a bad spot because we've seen Malik Willis struggle in the NFL. He put Malik Willis in the exact right positions, running the ball when he had to, and when he had to throw it, throws were they were just there for him. It was very clear pictures for the quarterback. He put Malik Willis in positions to win. He put this Packers offense in positions to win. That's what a great coach does. And Matt LaFleur might have had his best day as an NFL coach today. It
becomes part of the identity for the Packers. And in the same way that it's now part of the identity for the Vikings. There are certain coaches that just are quarterback whispers, and Kevin O'Connell has found a way to do that. I mean, Sam Darnold and the Vikings pull off a big win, 23-17 over San Francisco. And sometimes, look, it's better to be lucky than good. I say this all the time. It's better to be lucky than good. There were several times in this game that I thought Brock Purdy threw balls that would usually be complete. And whether it was because they rubbed the balls in oil or they were playing hot potato, I don't know. It just felt like several completable footballs suddenly became interceptions. But this Vikings team continues to be opportunistic. This Vikings team continues to be efficient. And Kevin O'Connell continues to show that he's capable of building a winning game plan. I mean, 23-17 win against the 49ers. And suddenly we're sitting here saying, man, maybe we thought the Vikings might be plucky. And the Vikings might not be plucky. The Vikings might actually be really good.
Yeah, Kevin O'Connell deserves all his flowers, but I think the most interesting story developing now is Brian Flores. He's our defensive coordinator. We all know what happened in Miami. Sues the NFL. All the stuff comes out about him and Tua. Obviously, Tua was not very happy with how Flores coached him. But Brian Flores is showing again, he is a heck of an X's and O's guy, especially on defensive end. The 49ers got their stats wise, right? Like Jordan Mason got his 100 yards. Brock Purdy, I think, had 319. But if you watch this game through 3 quarters, this was a real struggle for the 49ers. They were stuck on 7 points. This Vikings team is flying around. They did it against the Giants last week. You're like, whatever, Giants. You do it against the 49ers, that's a different deal. This Vikings defense improved by leaps and bounds last year. Flores' first year there. Flores it looks like he's improving them again. And at some point, we're going to have a conversation of, do NFL owners just ignore what happened in Miami and the lawsuit, which owners are going to hold against him? Let's be honest. Let's be real. Like that is going to be a stopping point for some NFL owners. Do they ignore all of that and give Brian Flores a second chance to be a head coach? Because most defensive coordinators who coach this well get a chance to be a head coach or at least interviews. I'm really fascinated to see where this Brian Flores story goes. Vikings look good. They're first place right now in the NFC North. Who would have thought that, right?
I mean, I was sitting here saying, jokingly, I know, but I made the comment several times. Our very own Nate Tice on Football 301, who does a great job breaking quarterbacks down, has said clearly that he believes that the Vikings actually, with Sam Darnold, have a quarterback that can play in the NFL, that can be a good quality starter. I sat there and watched a lot of the game today and thought, man, why'd they draft JJ? Like, I know JJ is going to to be great. Everybody loves it. But I was watching and I was thinking, damn, this looks like somebody that's, I mean, Good for Minnesota getting it done. And look, O'Connell is getting so much street cred, rightfully so. There's a reason that these guys got signed to new contracts. When you got that guy, you got that guy. You will always have a chance if you have a coach as smart as Minnesota has right now. Kudos to the Vikings. They're one of the early season surprises. One surprise today to me was that Jacksonville came out terrible. Trevor Lawrence, quarterback, was actually honest with the team, with the world, when asked after the game and said, we suck right now. Cleveland wins 18-13. The weather was terrible. All of these different things. It was just an ugly, ugly football game.
Absolutely was. I mean, at one point in the third quarter, Trevor Lawrence had 16 yards on 12 attempts. Third quarter. Like, what? You're a $55 million quarterback. And again, weather's bad, but it's always something, right? There's always an excuse for Trevor Lawrence. And all right, we're not to the point of we're arguing whether he should be this or that. No, you're a $55 million a year quarterback. You have to be great. That's it. That's part of the deal. You get a contract like that, you need to be great. He was not great in this game. He rallied a little bit, got him back in the game, but then at the end, when you need to get a ball out, you're backed up at your own end zone, doesn't get the ball out right away, takes a safety, and that's ball game. So very unimpressed with Trevor Lawrence, and that goes back to last week. Second half, they have a chance to put away the Miami Dolphins. He misses on a lot of passes. They had nothing going in the passing game in the second half. Allow the Dolphins to sneak in the back door and win it at the final play with a field goal. And then this week was just ugly. He got, I talked before about Malik Willis, outplaying his counterpart. Well, Trevor Lawrence got outplayed by Deshaun Watson today. Deshaun Watson, who we've been killing all week, saying he stinks and he's get benched for Jameis Winston. I thought Watson was actually the guy making plays out there. He did enough for his team to win. Browns defense showed up. Trevor Lawrence did not. They're 0-2 and a bad 0-2 as well. So again, I hate this whole go around with Trevor Lawrence, right? But we both kind of been there of saying, well, you need to be better. And okay, when you're not paid, maybe there's some argument, I don't know, whatever. But I know when you get paid $55 million a year, you need to be better than Trevor Lawrence has been through these first 2 games.
Yeah, and I will say Deshaun Watson, you're right, was better in this game for sure. Right now, this division, the AFC South, particularly the Jags, the Titans, the Colts, all look bad. The Texans sitting at 2-0, already have a 2-game lead in the division. Like, we thought the division would be more competitive because you were given benefit of the doubt to the way all of these rosters are constructed. I'm looking around thinking now, my God, like the Texans could have a cakewalk to a division title at this point, which is stunning. Speaking of the Texans, they beat Chicago 19-13. Okay, week 1, I said Caleb Williams struggles against the Titans. Not a big deal. Didn't have a lot of footage on a new defensive coordinator. It's easy for me to understand why things might look bad. Now we get a 19-13. It's a good Texans team. We know how good this Texans team is, but man, Caleb's got some work to do. This game, again, we didn't see scheduled throws. We didn't see things going easy. We saw Caleb trying to make huge plays left and right, and it cost them the game. A costly interception when he didn't get sacked. It cost them, a possession late in the game. Takes another hit, stays in bounds that he shouldn't take. Like, it's just little things not being executed the right way by Caleb Williams. High expectations, and the battle of the top quarterback from last year versus the battle of the top pick from this year. CJ Stroud certainly looked like everything that Bears fans think Caleb Williams is going to be and is not yet.
I thought Caleb looked more comfortable, but still, I mean, a team that didn't get 150 yards last week in total offense, this week didn't get over 150 yards until 6 minutes were left in the game. I mean, this was offense just not going anywhere. And like you said, the ball's got to come out. Like, I don't know if the coaching staff needs to put him in better situations, or my guess is Caleb Williams is just trying to do too much, where he's got to hit his back foot and get the ball out. The Texans had something like, I saw Greg Rosenthal of NFL.com tweeted, like something like 29 pressures in this game, 17 from Will Anderson and Daniel Hunter. And part of that's the offensive line is not there yet for the Bears, and they're going to have to improve it next offseason. Part of it is Caleb is holding it too long. You can't do that. You're developing bad habits. You go back to your final season at USC when you felt you had to do everything, and praising him for mistakes. Look, he gets away from a sack. I think it was Hunter, where he spins away and the jersey rips, and then he throws it downfield to Cole Kmet, and there's 3 Texans players that are waiting for the interception. And Chris Collinsworth, who's very good at his job, but sometimes says stuff I disagree with, is like, oh, well, that's okay. You just got to take a chance. He got the no, you made a bad mistake throwing into triple coverage, and he threw an interception when your team absolutely didn't need it. I don't care if he made a great play spinning out of a sack. It doesn't do any good if you then throw an interception. So Caleb does have a lot to work with. I will say this about the Texans.
And then,
go ahead.
Real quick on Caleb, there was also an offensive pass interference on what was a pick route in the second half. Would have been a touchdown for the Bears. I think what a lot of people may not realize in that play is that it was not the pick route or the wide receiver's fault that threw the block. That ball has to come out of the quarterback's hands quickly. If the ball is already out of the quarterback's hand, the pick is going to be legal. The problem there wasn't anything about the play. The problem was the quarterback held the ball too long before he actually threw the football. Caleb Williams created that offensive penalty, even though he doesn't get credited for it.
And yes, by the way, I think Caleb Williams is going to be great. I think he's going to be a fantastic player. It's just he's developing bad habits that go back again to his last year at USC when he's trying to do everything and holding the ball too long and trying to spin away from everybody and make crazy plays. When no, just hit your third step or your third step drop and get the ball out to Roma Dunze or DJ Moore or whatever it is. He had a few more of those plays this week. It'll come over time. I get that. The Texans, by the way, real quick, if their defense is going to play like this, this might be a championship caliber team. I mean, if your front is going to be that good and play this well, like they had a big say in shutting the Bears down. The offense was not good today. I mean, Stroud made his plays. He's a very good player. This offense was basically Kaimi Fairbairn hitting 50-yard field goals. I mean, all of a sudden he's maybe best kicker of football through 2 weeks at least he is. And that was the entire Texans offense. Nico Collins had a nice game too, but they won this game ugly. And you know what? You got to win games in January ugly sometimes. And I thought that this was a good learning experience for the Texans to say, hey, we don't need CJ Stroud to throw for 350 yards for us to win. We can win this way too.
All right. We still got to get to the worst team in the NFL and the biggest breakout performance. We'll do all that when we come back. All right, Frank, as we go through all the different games, I got to give a credit here to the Chargers getting a big 26-3 win. But I think we learned something here. What we learned, I think it's officially time to say it. We all know Carolina sucks. That's fine. I think Bryce Young might just be bad.
84 yards, 84. I mean, going back to last season, my number one troubling thing, and you can go back, I wrote this in a preview, was not really that Bryce Young was bad, because a lot of rookie quarterbacks are bad. Like we talked about Caleb struggling a little bit. We've seen Bo Nix, we're going to talk about him, and he struggled. But you at least see some glimmers of hope. You see some place, or Caleb Williams or whoever, where you're like, oh, wow, that's why he was the first pick of the draft. You did not see that with Bryce Young last year. There were just no plays where you're like, or stretches, or the one game he had was against the Packers. It was pretty good, actually. But most of the season, you were like, it just isn't there. But whatever, that's fine. Bad situation. They overhauled everything. They spent a lot of money, draft picks, everything. And I gave him a chance. I came into the year, you could go back and look. I was saying, I'm giving Bryce Young a chance. I think they could be a lot better this year. Still think he's salvageable. 2 games in, it's over. Like, I remember me, you, and Charles Robinson podcasting this summer, and he was talking about everybody's scared that David Tepper in midseason is going to blow everything up and say Bryce Young's not the quarterback anymore. We all laughed. We're like, oh my God, David Tepper. Right now, as I sit here, I'm sitting to myself saying, can you last all season with Bryce Young as your quarterback? Like, it might be the right thing to just say, we can't watch this anymore, Bryce. And I think if this continues for Bryce Young, I don't think in any good conscience you can go into year 3 of the Bryce Young experiment. I just think it's over.
Oh, no.
Right? Like, we're talking about 2 games into the first overall pick second year. And both of us agree that if this is the level of play, there's no way he's our starter in year 3. Like, that's unbelievable how quick this has happened.
This is set to be currently the biggest era of futility ever seen in sports. Like, think about it. Carolina had the first overall pick. They drafted Bryce Young. That means they were so bad they had the first overall pick. They traded the next year's first overall pick, which was used this year on Caleb Williams. So 2 straight years, the Panthers would have had the first pick in the draft. As of right now, there's no reason to believe that they won't be in contention for the first pick in the draft again. Yeah, in any sport, we've never seen a team with the first overall pick in 3 straight years because they were that bad. Like, that just shows you how terrible this is for the Panthers. And yeah, they're going to have to cut bait. You can't keep running it back. Like, it's obvious. Even the joke one of my buddies made is every time the Carolina Panthers come up on red zone with the ball, you know it's either going to be a sack or a safety or a turnover by Bryce Young. That's it. There's no hope. There's no hope right now.
They have gotten outscored in the first half of their first 2 games, 50-3. 50-3 in the first half of their first 2 games. I was starting to wonder if Dave Canales gets fired even before his first year's over, pulls a Nathaniel Hackett or Urban Meyer here, although I hope he doesn't kick his kicker or anything like that.
Or Frank Reich.
Yeah, right? Like,
they just
all
did
of a sudden, we're getting to a point where it's like, if this doesn't get any better, like, David Tepper is not going to be patient. And this time it's kind of justified. Like, his football team's worst by far. Like, they're not an NFL product right now. Like, they are a JV team at this point. Like, I joked in Winners and Losers, like, stats against the Panthers should just count for half. Like, if you throw for 300 yards against the Panthers, you only get credit for 150. Like, they're just terrible right now. They're absolutely positively unwatchable. And I don't know how they can win games playing like that. Like, this is a bad football team.
I hope they get it right, just not this coming Sunday when they play my beloved Raiders. You mentioned Bo Nix. We were honest about this in the preseason, that we didn't care about his success there. He looked lost and confused today. The Broncos lose 13-6 to the Steelers, who get a gutty win. I mean, look, I don't think the Broncos are particularly good. And I don't know that Justin Fields has shown us anything to be a world beater. I still don't trust the Steelers offense. The Steelers defense is good. And the Steelers defense throughout the course of the game had absolutely Bo Nix seeing ghosts. He was confused. He's lucky. It felt like he could have thrown 15 picks in this game. Like, the number of times it was close.
Same last week,
it was just, this is not a great effort by a Broncos team that I don't think is particularly good, but it's an important win for the Steelers. I mean, the Steelers find a way to get a big win here, and that means something, Frank.
The Steelers are 2-0 right now with 1 offensive touchdown. Like,
it's wild.
Okay. Like, great. Like, I'm kind of like, I was writing about the game today, and it's like, I'm not going to sit here and say, like, oh, Justin Fields, they found something. It's like, well, he's done enough to not lose his job, I guess, to Russell Wilson. But the offense isn't very good, but it doesn't matter when your defense is this good. Like, TJ Watt looks like he wants to win another Defensive Player of the Year award. The whole defense up front is great. The secondary played great today. They really baited Nix into that interception. And yeah, Nix, I thought he'd be competent early on, right? Especially Sean Payton. And I thought they would run the kind of offense where, like, it's not always going to be pretty, but at least he'll be effective in spurts. And he's just not right now. And I just wonder kind of what the end game here. Do you just let him play out the whole season no matter what? Do you think about Jarrett Stidham at some point? Because you don't want to ruin him. I don't know. I think it'll get better. I mean, look, played at Seattle on the road, and I think Seattle's going to be a pretty good football team. Played Pittsburgh, and it doesn't matter where. Pittsburgh is awesome defensively. So it has not been an easy start for Bo Nix here to his career, but he hasn't looked good either. Look, it was going to take time. It was always going to take time. You just wish you would have seen a little bit more out of Bo Nix. I'm not giving up on him. I think he's going to be just fine with Sean Payton down the road, but this first year might get ugly. It's off to an ugly start for sure.
Not ugly. Anybody on their fantasy team that had Austin Seibert. Austin Seibert, if you're keeping track at home, would be the name of the Washington Commanders kicker, who was 7 for 7 in today's action. A 21-18 win over the Giants. And I honestly, Frank, I watched this game and I thought, man, stats lie. Like, you'll watch this and you'll read it and you'll try and figure out how Daniel Jones' numbers weren't bad, right? Malik Neighbors had a couple of nice catches in this. Like, if you were just watching on Red Zone, you'd think, man, the Giants got this game. It just never materialized, and they could never separate themselves. This whole football game felt ugly to me. Even Jaden Daniels, who continues to be pretty efficient, continues to do a good job of not making big mistakes, but there were just so many moments that felt clunky in this football game. Commanders get a 21-18 win over the Giants, and I watched it thinking the whole time, well, it's good to know that I'll even watch bad football, because it was just bad football.
Something I always say is, if you get the small decisions wrong, it probably means you're getting the big decisions wrong too. And in this game, Graham Gano, the Giants kicker, goes on the injury report Saturday. And even before the game, some of the Giants beat reporters they didn't bring up another kicker. This is really not too smart by the Giants. And what do you know? Graham Gano, first kickoff of the game, injures himself, can't kick the rest of the game. So now they're going for 2 every time. And at the end of the game, it's 4th and 4. Daniel Jones puts a good pass on Malik Neighbors, who drops it. And I got on him a little bit in winners losers for dropping it, and said he had a great game. But that was kind of a turning point in the game. But honestly, Malik Neighbors shouldn't have been on the field at that point. They should be kicking a field goal. But the coach and their general manager couldn't figure out that an injured kicker on Saturday probably isn't very good to go into a game without some backup plan on Sunday. And it's just kind of the disorganization of the New York Giants comes back to bite them. If you're getting these decisions wrong, how can you get any decisions right? So really that was kind of a game within a game type of thing, where the Giants, one decision leads to just you losing a football game. But
you can't tell me that doesn't have lingering effects to the locker room too. Because everybody sees that level of incompetence, and everybody turns around and says, you want me to follow you? You want me to trust you? You want me to work my ass off all week, only to be let down by an organization that simply doesn't have a solution to what was a foreseeable problem? Like, we're not talking about a kicker that hurts themselves, God forbid, slipping on the field that we don't expect, or jumping and celebrating like we've seen in the past. No, this was a situation that could have been anticipated, and they simply didn't.
Yep. And also with Washington, real quick, Jaden Daniels, the first 6 quarters of his career was just so careful, safe, short, dink and dunk. Second half, it opened up, and he looked really good. Look, this was the last half. I've been talking about how I'm a Jaden Daniels fan. I'm kind of giving up my hope that the Commanders are going to be good this season because I think their defense stinks. But you saw in the second half, Jaden Daniels getting confidence. The coach is getting confident in him to be like, hey, we need to go win this game. We just can't play this not to lose. We need to go win this game, and Jaden Daniels did it. Very impressive. They didn't get in the end zone. Look, it's not a finished product by any means. I'm not saying they played a perfect game, but you could take highlights out of that second half from Jaden Daniels when he was pushing the ball downfield, when he's getting aggressive, when he was getting them in position to kick the game-winning field goal. Pretty impressive second game for Jaden Daniels. We've seen other rookie quarterbacks struggle. Jaden Daniels has been great coming out of the gates, but you see the improvement. I think he's really on a path where he's going to be a difference maker this season.
You also see the improvement from what we expected for the New England Patriots, who take the Seahawks to overtime. Seattle gets a 23-20 win. I was stunned, Frank. I mean, I watched the Patriots team for the second week. That's just they're plucky. They're competing. Like Jerod Mayo has got a team that is playing with. There's an oomph to what they're doing right now. That nothing about it is pretty, and nothing about it makes sense. But they gave Seattle everything they could handle throughout the course of that game.
Everything. And I mean, I thought honestly we'd be sitting here tonight, and when the Patriots came up, I'd be like, well, they're 0-2. Probably got to go to Drake May pretty soon because Jacoby Brissett's not doing anything. And look at their schedule. They're going to lose like their next 8 games before we can start talking about them getting a win. And it's been nothing even close to that. Hats off. I was wrong. I was wrong about the Patriots. I thought the Patriots were going to be the worst team in the NFL. They are not. They'd probably beat the Panthers 42-zip. Like, I mean, they are playing so much harder for Jerod Mayo than the Panthers, maybe even the Giants at this point. They're not even close to the worst team of football, and they're playing well. Like, they should have beat the Seahawks today. They didn't. Look, there's a talent gap there. The Seahawks, I think, are a good football team. I really do. I think that, look, Geno Smith looks like kind of like he looked 2 years ago. JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba had a really, really big game. DK Metcalf made the plays. Yeah, this is a team that didn't have Kenneth Walker, still came in, beat the Patriots. Early start for a West Coast team is always a tricky spot. Look, was it impressive for Seattle? No, but they came out with the win. That's the most important thing for them here. 2-0. I like what Seattle's doing. I think they're going to be a good team. I think they're going to be a playoff contention, and the Patriots nose and nose with them the whole game. So, again, hats off to the Patriots. I don't mean to be like little league coach giving everybody participation trophies and, hey, you tried your best, kid. But the Patriots have been just so much better than I thought they would be. They're going to be a tough out all season just because I think Jerod Mayo has really rubbed off on this team. His personality, the way he was as a player. There's a toughness there. There's a we won't quit type of we don't listen to anybody who says we're terrible. We can go beat anybody. I think that mentality you could tell, but the way the Patriots play, it's a team that if I'm a New England fan, I know we're going to probably lose a lot of games this year. I'm still proud of the way this team is playing and fighting, and I feel pretty good about my head coach at this point.
Anytime you run the ball 36 times for 185 yards. And Hunter Henry is basically your only offensive pass-catching weapon. That tells you the identity of what this football team is going to look like. So kudos to New England. I will say, Seattle, look, they're 2-0. And they're 2-0 with the new head coach, with the new system, and without Kenneth Walker III. They simply couldn't get the run game going. Zach Charbonnet ends up 14 carries, 38 yards, averaged under 3 yards a carry. They just never could run the football. They were getting sort of beat up on the front a little bit. That's got to get better. But if I'm Seattle, I'm looking at it and saying, man, new culture, new offensive scheme, new defensive scheme, sitting at 2-0.
Again, in an NFC West. Figuring things out when you're 2-0 is so much better than those teams going in Monday morning saying we're 0-2 trying to figure out how to get our offense going. Like, now Seattle's like, you know what, guys, we got some things to work out, but we're 2-0. Feeling pretty good. So I could get better from here. So,
and you're about to take on a Dolphins team probably with their backup quarterback, right? So, like, you know, that's a whole nother issue. One more game, obviously, that we haven't touched on yet, and it was really the breakout performance that everybody wanted to see week 1. We just got it week 2. But one of the more stunning results by final score, Marvin Harrison, 2 touchdowns in the first quarter, ends up with 4 catches for 130 yards. Ooh. Arizona wallops the Rams 41-10, and it was one of those moments where, I mean, to me, probably the most impressive part of this was watching Murray just get back there and fling it. Like, it was like they heard all of the chatter and just wanted to come out and shut everybody up right out of the gates. It was explosive. The Rams had no answer for it. I mean, the Rams felt outclassed and outmatched from the outset of this game. And if this is the way it's going to be, this was a clear statement to the NFC that the Cardinals are much closer to being a playoff team right now than the Rams are.
Maybe. I mean, I never really had any questions about the offense. We talked all offseason about how this team was going to put up a boatload of points. Like, Kyler was going to have a big year. Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be fine. Last week was tough on him, sure, but whatever. I didn't really worry, and yes, he was awesome in this game. What really stood out was the defense. Like, if the defense is going to play like this, I mean, the Rams struggled the whole game. Like you said, like from the first quarter on, it was over. Like, this was one of those games when I didn't even have to pay much attention. Yeah, they just got taken to the woodshed this game. It was awful for them. And this is a Rams team that almost beat the Lions last week, right? Like, this is a Rams team that made the playoffs last year. They're coached by Sean McVay, who's really, really good. They didn't have Puka Nacua. They had other guys out for injury. I get that. But to get beat like this, very surprising. And again, if the Cardinals defense is going to play, they're not going to play like this all year. I think that's asking too much. But if they're going to be competent, like they were in the first half against Buffalo, like they were this whole game against the Rams, the Cardinals can make the playoffs. So one hang up I had on the Cardinals and everybody kind of calling them out as their dark horse playoff team was, where's the defense? Is defense really going to be good enough for them to go to the playoffs? Well, the answer so far is yeah. This is what we see out of their Cardinals defense. The offense is going to be there. It's going to be really, really good this year. If this is what the defense is going to be, they got a shot. And I think if you're the Rams too, you're disheartened coming out of this. Like, you felt okay. You lose to Detroit in overtime. It's like, that stinks, but whatever. That's going to happen to a lot of teams. You get boat race like this by the Cardinals. That ain't a good 0-2 feeling when you come in on Monday morning.
There are some butt whoopings that linger longer than 1 week. We'll see if this is one of those. All right, before we get out of here, Monday Night Football, Atlanta at Philly. Philly favored by 5.5. No A.J. Brown as the dabblers we are. Any feel on this game right now?
I'm so worried about Atlanta because of how weird their offense was because Kirk Cousins couldn't move last week. But in a week where everything was turned upside down, I'm taking Atlanta to keep it close. Let's put it that way. I'm not even ruling out them winning straight up because no survivor pick is safe anymore. A lot of people probably have Philly if you didn't take one of the teams that lost today. So I think Atlanta keeps it close and plays a lot better than they did last week. And I'm almost doing that because I just don't know anything about the NFL anymore based on what we've seen in the first 2 weeks.
No, I think you're right, though. I think Atlanta has... that we've seen this. Teams that come out week 2 are going to have a little bit of a punch in their gut. I think I expect to see better from Atlanta. Expect to see some adjustments. I think Philly wins the game. 5.5 just feels a little bit rich for my blood. We'll see how it goes. Obviously, Frank and I will be back all week as we go through our crew and give you inside coverage. Most importantly, we got to thank Stone, who stays up late with us every single Sunday night to make sure that we get these episodes out for you guys. Make sure, again, you rate, subscribe, review, tell your friends, your family, and enemies. Tell everybody to hang out with us. Follow us on social media at Yahoo Schwab, at Jason Fitz. We'll be back on Wednesday with Jory. Enjoy week 2. I'm gonna go grab a non-alcoholic drink at 1 a.m. on the East Coast and continue to celebrate a wild Sunday, Frank. It's been fun, buddy. Can't wait to see you Wednesday.
Absolutely, man.